don't feel well. But I see things that need to be done. Kind of wanting to be the one to do them now, can I?
I'm Lewis Henry Robinson. I'm Lewis Henry Robinson.
Hello and welcome to the Matt's Movie Reviews podcast. I'm your host, Matthew Pejkovic, and this is episode number 195. Releasing in selected Australian cinemas on March 14 is Pimped, a psychological thriller told through the unique perspective of an abused and conflicted woman who is caught in a sick and twisted sexual game between two men. A cinematic and highly engrossing thriller, Pimped is recommended for film fans who love their movies with style, is performance-driven and thought-provoking. Joining me now to talk about Pimped is the film's writer, producer and director, David Barker. David, I thank you very much for joining me today.
Matt, it's really good to be here. And just to clarify, I co-wrote this and co-produced it, so maybe we can talk about that down the track a little bit about those other people that were integral to those roles.
Excellent, will do. This is a feature movie for you. I read in an interview that you described the film as and I quote here, a crazy fucked up showdown between toxic masculinity and conflicted feminine power. Now that right there is a great tagline for a poster if I haven't seen one before. Where did you come up with the idea for this film? Was this something that is a response to recent times with a lot of the issues revolving around toxic masculinity? Did it come before that? How did it all come about?
I don't remember writing that one, but please send it to me. I would love to use that again. You know what happened? In the process of writing this, we started writing this 6 years ago, and that was before the explosion of the Me Too movement. And so the discussions around toxic masculinity, equality, women's rights, and, the Harvey Weinstein explosion, like all that stuff wasn't in the media landscape at all. I mean, people obviously, and especially a lot of women, had always had concerns about, the current sort of situation in culturally and within, gender politics, I guess. But we wrote this before that happened, and we wrote it about one woman who has this story, and she has this identity issue. She's conflicted. She's struggling within herself, and she unfortunately falls into the sights of Lewis Blake, who's a very toxic, rancid male, and then she has to deal with that battle. So it's a real battle between those two individuals. And what's interesting now is that the film's coming out, and it becomes politicized, which is not a bad thing at all. But it's really, it's not a political film. It's not really a statement about feminism. It's probably a bit more of a statement about male toxicity. I had heard a similar tale about the incident that happens in the film. Not sure if it's myth or if it was true, but we were thinking about, that was a heinous act to do to a woman, and what happens if the men responsible for that met a woman that was actually smarter than them, that was stronger than them and could fight back. And so that's sort of how it came to be. But such an interesting time now to be releasing the film.
Above all else, this is also a psychological thriller. And to me, a great way of determining the success of a psychological thriller is the film's pacing. And I love the pacing of this movie. It's got this methodical, almost kind of stalking kind of pace to it. When it came to you and your editor, Mary Ann Koo, when it came to you guys talking about the film, putting it together, how did you want to present itself on screen, especially in regards to that pacing? Because it's got really this kind of stalking quality, which I really loved about it.
It was, it's all from the script. Everything starts there, and I guess the pacing of that evolved somewhat to as you're doing rehearsals, as you're shooting, and then when you're doing the edit, then you're increasing that pace. What we found in the edit, sorry, someone just walked into my hotel room there, is that we can really cut the dialogue down and we really tightened up that aspect of it because it is a pretty talky thriller. And and that's just, going back to the same scene over and over again and looking for ways to just sharpen what they're saying, why they're saying it, and the responses that are coming from the other actors in the scene.
Let's talk about your cast. So you have Ella Scott Lynch, who plays the role of Sarah. She's a TV and film actress, been doing this for quite some time. The role of Sarah is quite demanding. There are physical and psychological elements to the character that has to be represented on the screen. When you came across Ella, you talked about the role. How did you know that she was the one who could bring this character to life in your movie?
We had an actress attached to the film, and 5 weeks out from filming, she wasn't available to do the film anymore and had to pull out. And that added a massive amount of stress to our days. So we then had to go back out and look for a new Sarah. And in the original call-out to actresses, Ella wasn't available because she was having a child at the time. And then 12 months later, when our other actress had pulled out, Ella was available, and so I'd known of her from TV days, and I was particularly impressed with what she did in Crownies, and Love Child, and then Chocolate Underbelly. So there was lots of clips I could see of her, and had been watching her on TV for a few years, and then she did a casting, and it was just spot on. Like, you just sort of. She was able to shift from, around the territory that she plays in just a really authentic, natural way. And she was also a new mother, so, she was in a pretty intense place, and I think that really helped her get into character. Yeah.
On the other end, you have Benedict Samuel, who plays Lewis. This is really interesting for me to see Benedict on the screen live, because the last time I saw him was in David Wenham's film Ellipsis. In that film, he was playing this really charming, kind of goofy kind of bloke. In this film, again, another charming character, but this time there's a really kind of screwed up aspect to him, and intelligence there, but a really kind of despicable demeanor that's really rotten to the core of him. When it comes to casting Benedict, I imagine Benedict would be on first before you had anyone else involved in the film.
Yeah, actually, you're right. Benedict came on quite early. Had seen him in some local, I think it's Secrets and Lies, and then obviously he's working Gotham and Walking Dead. So he definitely had the chops, and he was interested in the material. He could relate to that. Not that Benedict has a bad bone in his body, but I think he could relate to what we were trying to say about the male aspect of the film and the toxicity, and I guess the sort of fucked up and two-bit psychology that this character has, and the way that he can justify what he does through his own perception of what reality is, and it's very warped. And I think he could relate to that out. In a wider scope, and see that out there. And I think also for Benedict, he'd done a lot of he got typecast as a bit of a artistic druggy type, and and so for him to do something that was really sharp, we cut his hair, super charming but psychopathic, was just really interesting for him to do, and to be on screen, him and Ella on screen for pretty much the entire film. So I think it was a decent role.
One of the other more memorable characters in your film wasn't actually a person. It was the house that a lot of this action takes place in. This great-looking house, photographed beautifully. It's almost like this kind of playground, where this cat and mouse game kind of happens between these two characters, and other things that happen in there as well. I don't want to give away anything, of course, but where did you find this house? Was it a long time to actually find a setting suitable to the role? How did it all come about?
It's great that you picked up on that. I mean, the house is a character in the film, totally. It was a gift. We didn't get it for free, but the universe gifted that upon us. It was I think the second house we looked at through our locations company that we worked with, and it was in Rose Bay in Sydney, fairly affluent suburb, but this house hadn't been touched since the 70s.
Wow. Okay.
And so the green carpet and the green walls and the floral wallpaper, and then in the in the second kitchen. It had this sort of disco feel to it. That was all there. We just brought our own furniture. Obviously, when the party scene, we set that up. But it had really good bones. It has over 2 stories. I mean, we could block out. So we did day for night. We shot day for night. So we had big blacks hanging out every day. And so it was just a perfect location for us. And for a lowly resourced indie thriller, it added a huge amount of production value, but it also had the right aesthetic. Like, it felt like that the character or the atmosphere in the house suited the nature of the 2 men that occupied that, in that same sort of haunted house vibe that you get in good horror.
Speaking of good horror, kind of like on that wavelength, the photography in this movie is fantastic, especially in regards to darkness. So much so that when light does appear in the film, like artificial light, like there was a scene at the start of the film where you're looking outside in the alleyway and there's this red light shining from, I think it's a bar or a club that's going downstairs. It almost seemed like to have a kind of hellish kind of quality to it. Your DOP was Josh Favell. When it came to you guys determining the look of the film, how did you come about wanting to talk about darkness? How it's going to, compare with scenes where you're going to have artificial light that really kind of shone through? Talk to me about the decisions you guys made in regards to that.
I've worked with Josh a number of times over the last few years. Many times we've worked together, and I come from a photographic background, so we the same language and we can really relate to each other on a visual sense. A lot of that credit also goes to our production designer, Bethany Ryan, who did a brilliant job, as you can see. In terms of the discussions we had, so the film takes place over 24 hours. It's pretty much all at night, and that was deliberately written that way. 1, more interesting things happen at night, and 2, we're able to light it. So we're able to create a noir thriller in that sense of being able to control the amount of light in the scenes, and then obviously that leads down to beautiful portraiture and just sculpting and crafting scenes where it's about image and performance. And I think that's where that's where you want to be in creating a thriller like this. That's a genre film. Is being able to exploit image and sound, of course. Pete Jones did an amazing job on the sound score. But you just really want to exploit those elements that are the core elements of the way the film looks and feels outside of performance. Exploit them in such a way where they're working for you to create tension and atmosphere. And in a sense, dark beauty. And that's really, I've always been inspired by like photographs of Joel Peter Witkin or Bill Henson, and that in a sense is something that over the years and years is imbued and it comes out in these films. And Josh and I had big chats about other films that we liked, and we put together a lot of sort of mood images that we wanted it to be literally dark as well as sort of create that cinematic beauty, which is offset then by some of the cruelty and the violence.
When it came to talking about those kind of influences or inspirations you're looking for in regards to the film's aesthetic, did David Fincher come up at all? Because I found a lot of that brought forth when I watched your movie. It had a very Fincher kind of quality to it.
Yeah, well, he's a master at what he does, and a big following his works from when he used to do music videos and TV commercials before he even got into features. So, that his approach to the way that he makes films, where they are very visual, and camera intercedes or intersects with performance in a very meaningful and considered way, and that's definitely had an impact on how we approach it. Same for someone like Refn in Drive, like those sort of directors definitely had an influence on us. But not really any one specific movie. It's just, I guess, when you're in genre, and this particular type of genre, you're working off, established, I guess, tropes within the genre, and then you're trying to bring and sometimes distort those a bit to do what you feel suits your story and your film.
Last question here, David. You guys have a really kind of interesting marketing thing out there right now for the film. It's this thing called All the Liars I Loved. It's pretty much like an interactive war where anyone who felt they've been betrayed in a relationship or such can kind of share that kind of betrayal in a really kind of creative, expressive, cathartic way. Who came up with this concept? Is that something you guys were developing while you were making the film? Did it come afterwards? How did it all come about? Because it's such an interesting way to bring about the themes of the movie and get people kind of involved in it as well.
It's, I don't want to sound like I'm bragging, but it was my idea. But so I'm the creative director on that particular project, which is part of our whole marketing campaign. And so I work closely with S1T2, which is an awesome tech company based in Surrey Hills. And so we worked together. Once we came up with, we had a few different ideas. We were looking at something along something along the line of the psychopath test. But you know, the whole reason behind this is marketing is such a huge part of filmmaking, of anything really, in terms of going out to the marketplace and releasing your film. And I've definitely got a producer hat on now instead of a writer-director hat on. It's just so important that you can engage with your audience and also have a world that you can talk about, and themes that you can talk about that create interest within the zeitgeist, and then maybe people will read that article, they might go to the website. And so All the Lies I've Loved, which is, and you're right, it's a place where you can share your not great stories about relationships or love, and people are doing that in all sorts of manners. And it's really been interesting to see the different approaches people are taking in sort of expressing their stress about, the sometimes hellfire ground of relationships. But it was,
And it's such an interesting thing. I'm just looking now at it. Just so many people putting up different posts. It's terrific, and I think it's a really good way for a film to interact with an audience and bring it full circle. People can find that at pimpedfilm.com, and I'm sure, David, they can also find kind of cinema times and which cinemas will be playing the movie as well.
Yeah, so there's a screenings page there. So basically, it was our website, and then we turned our website for the film into an interactive wall. So there's a menu there, and you can go in and you can see the reviews we've been getting, you can get the screening times, you can see the trailer. So it's really a film website, but what we did is we stuck this wall on the front of it where you can actually engage, and it's, strangely enough, it's quite cathartic to write some things down and share them out there, and you can share those across Facebook and Twitter and get your friends involved. So yeah. Excellent.
So for everyone out there, Pimped, 14th of March, select Australian cinemas. Check that pimpedfilm.com for All the Liars I Loved and all other information as well. David Barker, I thank you very much for your time today. I know you have to go. Congratulations to you with the film, and hopefully we can talk again in the future with any future projects.
Yeah, would love to, Matt. And thanks for taking a look at the film and giving us the time today to have a chat with.